Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, bots and cons to Tech Talk, the officially unofficial Transformers TCG Podcast. I'm joined, as always, by Scott of VectorSigma.info. How you doing tonight, Scott?
Good, just building decks as we talk.
Yep, that was part of the delay, as we're going over some stuff, and it's, I don't know about you, Scott, but there's something about when the set first comes out, or a set first comes out, that, to me at least, I don't want to say it's overwhelming, but it's just like, there's so many options that I end up jumping between a whole lot of ideas and then never really getting anywhere. When it starts to consolidate and things start to actually form and say, okay, well, we have these pillars, that's when I have more enjoyment in the deck building process, because it's okay, I'm not literally trying everything.
I don't think we've reached that point yet. So
right.
I guess this is actually the worst time for me personally, where like I think there's certain things that are good, but they're only good. Like the meta isn't defined. It's just that I think these decks are good, and if other people also think they're good, then like it warps what I feel like I can play. But if like the meta's still open, like I assume it is, and it's just being tainted by results that I've personally had, or other people that I'm close with have personally had with certain decks.
Right.
Like I feel like I'm creating a situation that's out there that probably isn't really out there. So like this kind of in between state, like where it's not 100% defined yet, and it's not brand new, is like the worst stage for me personally.
Oh, well, from hearing what you're saying, I could definitely see that. There's definitely a risk of warping it and having essentially inbred testing or inbred environments as a result. And then you show up to an event and go, well, I guess maybe that's not quite accurate.
Yeah, it seems like, I think, because like this is going to be at a point where, and I'm not saying it's not just our area, because we're lucky enough to usually have like multiple decent sized events every month. Mm-hmm. And people are generally playing like, pretty competitive decks at those events. It's more around the fact that I think what you're going to wind up seeing is like completely different decks do well each time at these events.
Right.
And so like, it's really difficult to build towards anything, because you just don't know what you're going to run into. And, you like play skill is still a massive point of it. So it's just a whole weird thing, I guess you could say.
Oh, absolutely. And then you got people like me who are going to show up with totally different things every week and not even try and refine the same build. So like you said, it's tough to actually pin anything down.
Yeah. And the other thing is like, I like to tune decks, and like when you only have, like, you don't want to show up to with the same thing over and over again, but at the same time, like I feel like making a 5-card or even like a 2-card change can have a significant difference, and you want to see what the effect of that is.
Right.
But you just may not have the time, I guess, or the desire to do that, and like so that causes situations as well.
Absolutely. There's a lot of factors that definitely mess with, especially like you said, in our area, we are fortunate enough to have potentially multiple events every single month. If you're in an area where it's, once a month or, every, 6 weeks or something like that, you could even have even greater wild swings, or, even less of an idea going in as to what you're going to run into.
Yeah. Or what you want to run. Like, I want to run this because I haven't run yet, or like,
right.
Whatever the reason is. And other than, like, I don't play in anything that's like local on a weekly basis. So like, I don't really even get my itch of playing certain things out of the way other than at tournaments. So, for me, it's all like, I don't know. There's only so many opportunities, even when you have multiple events a month.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's kind of the boat I'm in, where I have a lot of deck ideas that I want to try, at least against other people, just to get a feel for it, or maybe it's just experiment with this and it'll explain certain other builds that I want to try. But there's only so many hours in a day, especially ones that you can devote to leisure activities like this. So,
yeah.
I guess with our long introduction done,
sorry.
No, they don't need to apologize. I'm sure there's somebody out there who loves to hear the dissertation. So. To shout out to that one listener or viewer who loves that kind of stuff. On to the actual topic. So real quick, we did get the official app update. So now you can actually save decks in the app. I've toyed around with it a little bit. I wish there was a little more functionality on two fronts. One, that you could multi-select, and I guess that there were also a few other filters. And also if there was a slightly better way to export the list. I know I saw a couple people on Facebook trying to just screenshot each, like scroll down a little bit, screenshot it, scroll down, screenshot. It just feels a little clunky. I'm sure it'll come in.
That looked awful to me.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen that with other games. And it's just, it is what it is. Like, that's your option if you're going to go that route. So based on your response, I'm guessing you're not too excited to be building decks in there.
No, I mean, I use it basically like my, whatever you want to call it, like website where I get to see all the cards. Like, so
yeah, that's how I'm using it.
Yeah, because you're like, there are definitely certain the cost filters that don't exist. I would really like to see those. Would really help out my situation, for example. So, like, without that, it's just not as an efficient tool for me personally. But I mean, like, if I'm just looking at cards, it's efficient. So that's what I basically use it for.
It unfortunately right now, because like you said, some of the lacking filters, it feels as though it's best for me to verify the text on something I already know I'm looking for. Because then it's like, okay, well, I'll filter by blue pips and then I'll scroll down and go find it or whatever it happens to be. As opposed to, I want to see every action card, which you can't do without just looking at the whole list right now.
Yeah, and without there's not even I think you said this last time, like there's no like weapon filter or armor filter and things like that, and that can be annoying. So
exactly. So it's definitely a step in the right direction. I'm sure it's going to get more improvements, and I don't know if they're coinciding all the updates with like wave releases. I mean, it makes sense, but I'm sure they'll get more out there as we move on. Aside from the app, one other official first-party thing that I wanted to call attention to is there have been a number of articles over on Facebook from the designers talking about a variety of different cards in Wave 2. One of the more recent ones was Steamroll, which is one that's near and dear to my heart, even though I keep pulling it out of decks and I can't really find a home for it right now. Have you got a chance to go through all those, Scott? Any comments or anything that you noticed that jumped out at you in those?
There are certain writers I like better than other ones, but in general, I think that I thought actually the Steamroll one, we as a writers team, whatever you want to call it, I thought we actually hit most of those points on our own, which I thought was good, which
yes.
I mean, meant that we mirrored what the point of the deck was.
Right.
Where they saw a need for it because of the wide teams to have effects like that built into the set to combat some of that. Which I thought was good. I'm trying to remember what the other one. There was another one that I read that was, what was the one yesterday? Steamroll was today, I think. I'm trying to remember what the one yesterday was. There was a couple on there was one on Energized Field, which I was kind of I don't think that's why I actually use that card. The punishing attack thing, I was like, that's not really why I use that card, but okay.
Right.
So yeah, but they've been good in general.
Yeah, it's definitely good to get the insights, even if some of them are shorter than others, but it is important to hear or get to peek behind the curtain to some extent to what the designers are looking for, how they're going about things. And like you said, it was kind of cool that we were able to, I guess, align on the same track, at least as far as Steamroll goes. And we'll see if as future ones come out, if we end up on the same page going forward.
Yeah.
So those are the two, I guess, not really major, but only real news items, since as we started out with it, we're really in the thick of things, trying to pull every last ounce of information and data out of the new set and how we're going to do build. Scott, what in God's name are you doing over there?
Moving boxes.
I don't even know what it sounded like. It sounds like metal scraping on metal, which I guess is appropriate given the topics.
No, it's just boxes.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. So one of the things that we had discussed offline, Scott, you brought up that you wanted to talk about was what we're going to call combat tribes, which are, they're not cars, they're not Dinobots, they're not planes, those sort of things. These are actually the cards that care about whether you're melee, ranged, or specialist. So I guess they're classifications, or as opposed to, like, I don't know what the super types are called in Magic anymore, but instead of class, so like instead of being a priest, you're a specialist.
Yeah, I called them combat tribes, which I thought was the closest thing I could come up with. So I still believe that's the closest thing I can come up with.
So there are a number of things from Wave 1 into Wave 2, but a lot of at least the ones that got me really excited, were more in the Wave 2 end of things for the most part. So since you had wanted to bring this up, Scott, let me turn it over to you. Why did you want to bring this one up? What did you want to highlight for everybody?
I guess the point is that I think we at least doubled the amount of cards that depend on which of these combat tribes, we'll call them, you're in. And I wouldn't necessarily say, like, in isolation, the cards that came out now are more powerful, but what they have done from Wave 1 to Wave 2 is certainly, in my opinion, changed the ranking of them, of what they are. And I also think that some of the ones, especially in Wave 2, are singularly powerful, where you want to slant your deck to play those characters that have that trait. Sometimes that trait can make up for a deficiency that another character may have in stats or raw combat ability compared to another one, because it has this trait. So in Wave 1, I would say melee probably dominated, with body armor and then and power sword, even though I didn't play power sword in many decks, many people did.
Right.
So I feel like in that, during the Wave 1 metagame, that's where you really saw a lot of essentially combat dominance, and the best combat tribe for that was melee, because they had the highest bold and highest tough that you could get. I mean, I played a lot of body armor. Obviously, it was like one of the most important cards in mostly Optimus builds. So I would say during Wave 1, melee was by far the most important. There were some specialist decks that would pop up, but to be honest with you, like, unless you were going for some kind of weird combo deck, like, I still feel like multi-tool is trash. Pretty much unplayable. I would play multi-mission gear occasionally in other decks, but you really had to be in a situation where you wanted to play multiple actions in a turn. You basically wanted to give up your upgrade for the turn to play a second action, and there weren't that many decks that necessarily needed to do that.
It was mostly shockwave stuff, I think. To be honest.
I mean, it could show up occasionally, and, like, see, the problem was it was an orange card, and now we have multiple orange battle actions, so the card's actually better now.
Right. Because
you didn't necessarily want, like you didn't want to play it, like, and then leap, because those cards just didn't show up in the same deck very often. One of them was going to be the odd man out. So unless you basically wanted to play some kind of card draw action into a multi-mission gear, into a supercharge or something like that, that would be a situation. But that's a lot of strain in your hand for one turn, where basically all you got out of it was supercharging. Like, essentially,
exactly, yeah. The +1 armor is not the reason you signed on for this. Right.
So you weren't able to get, like, the Christmas lanterns you actually wanted out of it, because the card draw wasn't as efficient. If you were playing an orange-based deck, like, the best thing you were going to be doing was, like, I don't know, like, incoming transmission. You didn't already have the multi-mission gear in your hand. Like, you could treasure hunt into it, but then again, like, it's not an ideal situation. You're just basically getting the better action second. Because you needed to get the multi-mission gear to begin with. So it just wasn't a very, like...
And you could have just played the action anyway. That's unless you had the scenario, like you said, you incoming transmissioned into action plus gear to play gear into whatever the other action is, and it just isn't all that efficient. That's why, like I was saying, I haven't, or at least I wasn't really playing with it outside of Shockwave builds, just to get the, oh, well, system reboot. Oh, look, my next 4 cards had a reboot and a gear reboot again sort of thing.
Right. And I can see, and I can see where it would have value there. I could see where it had value in, like, I could have seen playing it in like Cars List. I could have seen playing it in basically anything with Wheeljack, and then like I could see playing it as like a one of in certain Dinobot lists,
right?
Because but all these situations force you to have multiple cards in hand, which was just more difficult during Wave 1. And then finally, Ranged. I think Ranged only had Armed Hovercraft. Oh, it had what's it called? The armor that made you discard.
Yeah, Rapid Ascent.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it really was lacking for options for the most part. And I mean, I personally like Armed Hovercraft, but let's face it, the majority of the time, whenever you played it, unless it immediately killed something, you were just enabling their Energon axes. I mean, I like Armed Hovercraft a lot. I wish I could have found more homes for it. I just couldn't because it was blue. It only gave you +1 attack. Technically, it's like 2 attack sort of on the first turn. It's better than that, but like right.
The problem was Rapid Ascent had no home. Right. I think was the big problem because, and again, I think that changes now. Because I think that you didn't have multiple discard outlets, and now you do. So spoiler alert, you can make them discard multiple cards in a turn. That's what makes it more powerful now.
Right.
For the later discussion. But so during Wave 1, I would say it was melee far and above certain niche situations where you wanted to play the specialist cards, and then range just didn't see a lot of play. I mean, the other thing is, as we talked about numerous times, your tanks and your planes were ranged, and they didn't see a whole lot of play. So
yeah, unfortunately, it was an unfortunate combination. I guess let me ask you this, and this is kind of a silly hypothetical, but would having access to marksmanship have made any difference, or do you think just primes would have done it anyway? Because, hey, look, Optimus is ranged.
It wouldn't have helped as much, I don't think. Not at all. I don't think so. I think there's more. I think you can play some of those tribes now, but the good / weird bad thing, I don't know how you want to say it, but like a lot of the cards now that I consider playable out of Wave 2, and we'll get into this, are the same colors that they were in Wave 1. So you're slanting your deck even more towards that color by playing additional combat tribe cards in your deck.
Oh, I see. So okay, I got you.
So it makes body armor worse that there's more melee cards out because a lot of them are orange. And it was pretty much like one of, like, if you were playing 3 of it, like 3 of 5 oranges you wanted to play in your deck anyway, max, to get its full use out of it. And right. Now it would be even worse if you wanted to play additional melee cards because a lot of them are orange also.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
The pip concentration, I guess, given a different slant to certain combat pip colors, definitely has become an issue where I'm building stuff and then all of a sudden, oh look, I'm running close to 20 of not the primary function, and it just skews the math enough in virtually every game that it throws off whatever the build happens to be. It doesn't sound like, oh, well, every other card is a blue pip, so you should be fine. No, the fact that you're only blocking 1 or maybe 0 because you went white pip, orange, white pip is a problem.
Yeah, and you see this a lot with the green cards as well. Add to that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Problem, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's veering a little bit off of the topic at hand, but it stems from, like you said, if you want to play body armor or some of these ones that, because in Wave 1 they were off color in order to try and, I guess, balance them out, and obviously going forward, now you're at even more of a disadvantage as a result.
Yeah, you're willing to do it now more for a green card because of the... I don't want to pretty much guarantee that you're going to get it throughout the game, as opposed to the... I think in Wave 1 it was a power level thing, so Body Armor's power level had to be balanced out by its orange pip. Power Sword's power level had to be balanced out by having a blue pip.
Right.
And the abilities alone don't want those colors, so...
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm not trying to play inverted in all my Body Armor and Power Sword decks. So.
Yeah. That, I mean, we talked about that a bit offline, but that seems to be rising in popularity. I don't know. That's another one that it's tough for me to, oh yeah, inverted exists. And then I look at a deck list and I'm like, can inverted work here? And I'm like, I don't know. My head hurts thinking about this, whatever. I'm just not going to play this card and go with something else.
Yeah.
So oh God.
Wait, Wave 2?
Yeah. So as for the Wave 2 stuff, I mean, there's, like you said, there's a lot of options that are brought to the table. I mean, obviously some better than others. I'm looking at cooling vents right now, which, I mean, I guess.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, it fits the theme. So, but beyond that, marksmanship, and that's why I called it out earlier, because personally I find marksmanship, and you were saying this earlier, that I guess in Wave 1, it boiled down to, okay, these cards, these characters are powerful enough. I'll fill it out with the remainder of things that they happen to have access to. So, I have a ranged guy. Well, maybe I can fit an armed hovercrafter. I'm blue and I have a bunch of melee guys. Okay, body armor. Or, body armor was strong enough to drive you to want to be melee and blue. Marksmanship and also field communicator, which I'm assuming are the two that you want to focus on, I'm setting out saying I want a ranged build with enough ranged characters I can guarantee that I can marksmanship, or enough specialists that I can take advantage of field communicator.
Those are the two big ones, yeah, for sure. And they give play to the other ones that existed in Wave 1 that didn't see as much play having a use as well.
Is there one you have in mind there?
Well, I think Field Communicator with multi-mission gear just gives you more options to, like, it turns the specialist into completely, I get to play more things in a turn based on my upgrade slot. I think it gives more play to allowing you to play multi-mission gear in specialist decks, which I think were more niche before, because you're going to playing Field Communicator, you're going to be putting in multiple specialists. So you pretty much, if you are an orange-based deck, which you can be, you get access to multi-mission gear as well. And I would probably run some token number of them. I think it's like it brings that card along for the ride. Mm-hmm. And then marksmanship certainly brings armed hovercraft along for the ride, because they're both blue pips. They're both, I know, armed hovercraft, I wouldn't consider it, quote, direct damage, but it's indirect damage to their team.
Right.
And
the fact that it's damage and it bypass, I mean, like you always say, it's just the fact that it's straight up damage. You don't have to worry. You don't care what they're doing or who it is. You're just getting in there.
Yeah.
And it's the critical mass at this stage that now you're running 6 damage across 3 cards, plus another 3 to their entire team across the other 3 cards, plus potentially Plasma Burst or One Shell Stands, or you don't even have to, because now you have them filled with cards that have a combat pip as well.
Correct.
Like I said, to start out, I'm building a lot of things with the outset, or just being more mindful of, okay, I really actually care about there being ranged ones. Now, to circle it back to melee ones, have you given a whole lot of thought to Energon Slingshot after this, the significantly worse armed hovercraft?
It is significantly worse than armed
yes.
hovercraft. I don't really understand what it has going for it, other than, I don't know, I need, like, weapons 7 through 9 in a melee deck, like, and again, in a blue melee deck, like, I can't. All the blue melee decks I want to play seem to have named characters in them, mostly named Optimus.
Yeah, and that changes the math significantly.
Yeah, or they have like if you look at the Sentinel deck, they have Ironhide now that's playable. In an aggro deck, like I just don't understand what the home is for Slingshot. I don't think it's a terrible card. It's clearly terrible standing up against Armed Hovercraft.
Well, yes.
It's clearly terrible standing up against a lot of cards.
Mm-hmm.
It's I guess as blue weapons go, I'm not really sure what it's clearly worse than Energize. It's assuming you have a way to use Energize, which is usually one shall stand for me.
Right.
In terms of other blue weapons,
that's the problem. And
yeah.
So if you're Decepticon build, you get access to Scoundrels.
Yeah. Or that's right. You get both of those.
Right. Depending on which side you're on. But beyond that, so we're assuming you're a blue build, because otherwise you're probably not reaching for this weapon at all.
Correct.
And if you're a blue build, you're not playing Backup Beam, which is probably one of the other ones that's coming to people's minds immediately.
Right.
And then after that, the list gets really short because you don't have Armed Hovercraft, or presumably if you're enough melee focused, you're not looking in that direction. We'll get into it when we jump to the next topic, but I was in one of my builds running these with Predacons, specifically just to answer Scrapnel or help address it because it shaves an attack off.
No, that's fair.
But it's not, I mean, I'll be honest, it's fine, but I don't remember if it was you or somebody else said it offline that it's like, that's a terrible phrase in card games where it's like, it's fine, but you're not going to feel great about it. And that usually tells you the card's not quite strong enough.
Yeah, I mean, Armed Hovercraft is powerful because against a combiner deck, you're doing 5 damage.
Yeah.
In the long run. Especially in like blue combiner mirrors, you're definitely doing 5 damage.
Right.
This is 1 damage. At all times, it's 1 damage.
Yeah, it's almost strictly... It has the flavor text, I'm here for Scrapnel, unless there's something else that I'm missing. Now, that is a valid... Like I said, it's useful because... And again, within the context of blue Predacons, which we'll explain in a little while, you're just big dudes running in there. There isn't a whole lot of nuance to it, so you need the extra out-of-combat ways to deal with things. Or maybe, you just happen to pierce a guy, get him to 1 health, and then, okay, we'll poke him and get rid of him. But beyond that, Slingshot is not something that it's not marksmanship. I'm not sitting down and going, I'm building a blue melee deck so I can play Energon Slingshot. And everybody out there, those are our co-hosts.
Yeah, my wife's out of town, so they're more ramped up tonight than usual. I'm trying to put them on the deck, but I think they want to go out. So if I lose you for a second, it'll be my typical thing.
No, that's
but
right.
Yeah, they want to go out. So I mean, you're right. If a deck needs a weapon 7 through 9, like I would definitely blasters over this either side, and I would definitely run Energon Axe over this. So this is what we're left with. I understand why they made the card. Again, like if it was orange, it would be too powerful.
I agree. I think the biggest issue is that, oh God, we're gonna have to give him a break.
Brody.
Come on, Brody, man. We're recording. You gotta cut his break.
Yeah.
Also, it could be other things. If we're in a different neighborhood, it would be like a fire engine or something in the background, or it would be whatever.
Yeah. No, it's just he wants to go out. That's all.
Well, that's allowed. It's allowed. The furry co-hosts need to get their time too. I think they're upset the most because they haven't gotten their 15 minutes of fame in the last few episodes.
I think they're very upset over Energon Slingshot.
Yeah, Energon Slingshot is a serious problem. No one's ever allowed to play this card. Or are they that excited about it and they're telling us we're dumb for not playing it?
Maybe. They are very melee, right?
Yes, that is true. That is true.
So I mean, I don't know how they could have made this card better. You can't have it do 2, obviously.
Well, I guess the question is if this was literally a melee armed hovercraft, would that have been too much? It probably would have.
It would have seen more play.
Well, for sure.
I mean, I even think if it did 1 damage to like 2 targets, it would have been fine. Like, it would have been better and probably see more play, I would assume.
Well,
like to 2 different targets or something like that.
Right.
That might have. I don't know what you could do here, and I just don't know that it's playable as it is. Like you would, if more cards had the barrage ability, like you're attacking a damaged target, I think it would see more play. But I just feel like you're always going to have a better way of putting damage on a character than playing this card. And honestly, this is the best card I think that Melee got in the set.
Yeah. Well, aside from that, I'm waiting for it to rotate, but let me check my list real quick. I couldn't even tell you. Oh, tackle. I didn't even put that on here, so I apologize. All our okay. So here's the thing for tackle, because that's something I'm glad you brought that up. The scenarios that I thought of, and I think we said this on one of our review shows when it was first revealed.
It was one of the last cards we revealed. I know that. I know exactly where I was standing. I was standing when we were talking about it.
That's of all the cards, that's the one you remember.
Yeah, because I know where I was walking them at the time. So.
Okay, so there are 2 things, and again, this also ties to Predacons. So I'll tell you in a second. Well, really, it's more for Constructicons, but we'll pretend it's for Predacons. So it's all the same general idea that, say you're playing something into bugs or into other aggressive deck. Is a reasonable scenario to say, I'm going to take one of my guys, tackle one of your reasonable attackers, say a barrage or a kickback or something, and is that giving you enough value? I think that it could, but my biggest issue with it is that aside from, okay, you're just tapping the 2 guys, you're not actually dealing with it, but also, you're just not going to do it consistently enough. Okay, great. You drew your tackle this game. Next game, you're not going to because it's only a 3 of. You need some other redundancy in the effect to deal with that kickback or that barrage or whatever it is to take it out of the picture.
I think there's just better way. Like, first of all, again, it's a problem that it's an orange card because to me, this is exactly the type of card that a blue deck would want to have because it can't kill guys as efficiently. So, I think it would be more efficient as blue and see more play as blue.
I agree.
But because it's orange, like if we assume it's going to see play, I mean, again, it can be the off-color card. I get that, but like if you assume that it's in an orange deck, like is it just going to be more efficient to kill the guy? Like the situation that you want to be in is like, again, let's assume this is a normal 3-character list, which I think you probably have to run this 4-character list, to be honest with you. Like, can you get enough damage from the other characters to one-shot the guy that you're tackling? And the answer is probably no. So then, like,
because the guy you're tapping probably is your big guy.
Or is just somebody that could have been doing damage. Like, it could just be anything. But, like...
Right.
On the flip side, like, you lose an attacker, they lose an attacker. Like, you lose your action. It's similar to, like, a lot of attack, like, in that situation.
Yeah.
I just think that, like, you could play Razor Claw. You could play... Super Rare Bumblebee, like to do the same exact effect of what you wind up doing in an aggressive deck, which is basically making the guy that you want to kill if he has enough stars. If there's a guy with a low enough stars that you want to kill, which is extremely difficult to do unless you're giving up a serious attacker, you're just exposing them, and there's probably better ways to do that.
So to bring it back to where I was going with it, I wanted to make it a Predacon thing, but let's just face it, where I'm going with this is actually for the Constructicons. So specifically, you could use Scrapper to tackle kickback and then pile on kickback, hypothetically.
Sure.
It's not, I mean, again, it falls into exactly the same trap that you were just describing, where is that good enough? I mean, for the Constructicons, you're still probably investing like 4 guys to kill them.
The only card I could think of that this was going to be good enough in was the Sentinel Optimist, because once he's in play, he's the worst guy you have in play. And he's 11 stars. I just still can't even think of what 11 star and below other guys I even care about enough to waste my attack on them when I could just be attacking in an orange deck for at least 6.
Right. No, I absolutely agree with you.
But I can't even think of who you'd want to even tap in that situation.
I guess Barrage, but then they're just not going to transform him, and you'd probably have to spend your next 2 attacks punching him, I guess.
It's like Wheeljack. I don't know. Like you could just tap guys that are just going to do more damage, but then that's all you're really doing. Like, I'd rather play Inferno Breath over this card almost every time, to be honest with you. Doing the same negative. I know you don't tap your opponent's guy, but 3 damage to him can be more important than just tapping him. So,
well, yeah, it could just kill him, which is better than tapping him. I honestly totally forgot about Tackle, which I guess kind of sums up the discussion rather succinctly.
Exactly.
I totally forgot that it actually requires a melee guy too. Like, for some reason, I don't know.
There's no utility melee guys, which is part of the problem. Your utility characters are your specialists, which I think is what makes them powerful. I guess they, and again, because it's orange, it's like, I don't know. There are too many things going wrong with it, but aside from those, we briefly touched on cooling vents. Obviously, there's not a whole lot going on there. Intelligence mission, I guess. It's not bad if you're playing a 4-character deck with, or even a 5-character deck, and you can and you feel like you need card draw out of an orange deck because it's white, like Predacons have Dive Bomb. You can obviously make, non-combiner 5-color teams. This would have been really good in Constructicons if they had a specialist, but they don't.
Yeah.
I don't think Aerial Bots needs this, even though it has 2 specialists. So I wouldn't run it there. And Stunnicons, I guess, can run this because they don't need the card draw. They have other ways to draw cards. They don't need it. That's the problem.
Yeah. Well, they need a lot of things, but card draw is not one of them. We'll leave it at that. Yeah, I'm not. I actually was. I mean, I wasn't super enthused to run Intelligence Mission when it was revealed, but it was like, oh, this is a really cool effect. Let me see what specialists we get, and it has potential, but there aren't many that I want to run out there and to stand in front for the most part. Like you said, the teams that I would want to do it with either don't have a specialist or the specialist isn't the right guy for that job.
Aerial Bots have a specialist that are the right guy for the job. I would rather run Inferno Breath, and I don't think you can run too many of those types of effects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I would play it. I would probably play it as like a 1-of in Predacons. Probably that would be my situation.
Yeah, I'm not, chomping at the bit to slide this into any particular build, at least right now. Were there any other ones that stood out to you, either from Wave 2 or ones from Wave 2 that enhanced Wave 1 cards that now you're revisiting the particular combat tribe?
It's basically just the where the new powerful ones drag along the playability of the other ones. So obviously Armed Hovercraft and Marksmanship go together, as we talked about earlier.
Right.
And are really good in blue decks, especially Aerial Bots. And then Field Communicator is just so good that it allows, in a combat-heavy deck, I think it allows you to drag Multi-Mission Gear along for the ride to want to play that as well, but I still think Multi-Tool is awful. So I wouldn't drag that one along.
I still feel, I mean, for Multi-Mission Gear, I don't know, I feel like it still fits that Wombo combo purpose. Like, I get what you're saying, that it's, okay, I'm a specialist deck. I'm going to play all the things in one turn. but because it's requiring the assets to be in hand, or, you chain multiple things together, I don't know if it can fit into that role of, oh, well, I'm playing field communicators, so I'll just slam it in there too.
See, I think what it allows is, so again, it's a non-ideal situation where when you don't have the upgrade you actually would want to play. I think it just gives you like additional outs. Like if you get action glutted, and that can happen, and like I said, your extra action is a supercharge or a reckless charge. Assuming you're playing both, or it's really just about reckless charge. But let's just assume you're playing both for a minute.
Mm.
Like if you treasure hunt, which you would normally want to do anyway, you don't hit one of your like grenade launchers or like actual erratic lightning, like the actual upgrade you want, but you do hit multi mission gear, and then you have either a supercharge or a reckless charge in hand. Your combat step is not as awful as it obviously would have been without hitting the weapon you wanted at all.
Right.
So I think what it allows you to do is basically, and I don't think you need to play a full play set of them again outside of like these combo type situations.
Of course.
But I think what it allows you to got to get yourself out of a situation where you're action glutted, because the actions are just better now.
Right.
Specifically, reckless charge, and like the reckless charge is pretty much brought supercharge along for the ride.
Yeah.
So if you're playing both of those in your deck and you have access to a specialist that you were playing anyway because of field communicator, I think you can probably slot in a multi-mission gear or two to get you out of bad situations where you're not making terrible attacks because you have no way of pumping your guy with any relevant combat weapon, I guess would be the situation.
I think I hear what you're saying. I just don't know. It's one of those where for me, I have to see a list to kind of visualize, okay, well, this is the slot that it's taking up, whereas I could instead play X. When we're, I guess, debating about it and it's much more open, I definitely hear what you're saying. I just can't envision, okay, well, yes, you could treasure hunt into it, but if outside of that, it feels like a stretch. You know what I mean? Like it could be any other upgrade.
Of course. But I think there are situations mathematically where it's going to be better to play this than Bashing Shield. If the +4 matters more than the armor they have, that can make it, for example.
Right. Yeah, I'm not trying to say that it's impossible or that there's no scenarios. It's just, it's tough for my brain to grok exactly where we're looking at it.
I think it's an interesting play in orange-based decks that also want to run specialists because field communicator is white and any deck, and it is really powerful. So
right, yeah, absolutely, because it's been showing up in a whole lot of things and with good reason. I didn't really have anything else to add on these. I'm a little upset at myself that I missed tackle because I really thought I got all of them on here, but I guess there's going to be one. I already said my piece about the slingshot. That's the only standout that I had. That I think you and I are on the same page for a lot of them, or I think most people are on the same page for it across a number of these. So I think the key is that for wave one, my ranking went melee way above the other two with specialist, and range being third, mostly just because of the characters that were involved. You had to play armed hovercraft, and now it's completely flipped where I feel ranged is by far the best. Range and specialists are pretty close because that's just how good field communicator is. Well, do you feel that, not to cut you off, but do you feel that body armor, because I still feel body armor is pretty powerful, but do you think that it's just the deck hasn't been found, or there is no body armor deck? There is no body armor deck. Strictly because of Bashing Shield? Yes. So a blue-based deck that will want to play body armor is losing even more value than it was when you flip it, because now the shelf life of your armor is way less. Right. And so now you have a combat pip in your deck that will hurt you on defense. And so the playability of it is to me, is just almost out the window. Right.
personally.
I hear you.
I like sparring gear is an orange that I hate running as it is, but like I think it's a necessary evil because it's just so accessible.
Of course.
I try not to run it as more than like a one of, but like I would not. You can't run body armor as a one of.
Yeah.
You're either all in or all out. And at this point, I'd rather take the slight hit on the amount of tough if I'm going to continue to run orange and run sparring gear, or I'm going to try to find a way to cheat superior plating into play.
That's also a good point.
Like, if I need that much defense, I'm just going to either go up or I'm going to go down. Like, I just don't think that you need to be right there anymore. And then we talked about this with just how powerful Bashing Shield just is. I just think you can't rely on that body armor anymore. And I still don't have a home for Power Sword, so.
Yeah. I'm actually, not to digress into Bashing Shield too much, but I'm very curious going forward. I mean, obviously, as metas cycle, you know, if everybody's playing Bashing Shield now, armor drops off. Maybe people say, well, there's not as much armor. Shave some Bashing Shield, maybe armor comes back, or at least, you know, you could... They only have one Bashing Shield, so they can only bash one thing. But down the line, future waves, I'm very curious as to what role armor is going to play, because obviously Bashing Shield is not going away anytime soon.
Agreed.
So
I guess one thing we didn't mention, I hinted at it. I'm still trying to find a home for Rapid Ascent because I feel like with how good Espionage is, if you can make your opponent discard 2 cards out of hand, I think you would want to Espionage first in the situation so you can make the decision more difficult for them. But it's very similar to the way the deck has Mirage and Espionage in one turn. So now you can have Espionage and Rapid. It's not targeted, obviously, but it just gives you like that. It's a strain on the hand. The other hand, especially when they're playing a wide deck.
Right.
So I feel like that's a card that probably could see more play if there's like good ranged orange aggro type decks. Like I haven't found a home for it yet because most of my range decks involve aerial bots and they're usually so. Right. But I do think it's a card that could see more play.
That's a good point. It's given how disruptive the Sentinel deck is already, I'm having difficulty imagining something that beats that on the disruption front. But that being said, you do get access, or you would be playing a totally different set of characters, so you can present a different set of threats. And also,
yeah, and to be honest,
oh god,
yeah, the Bashing Shield +1 armor in some decks I've noticed has made, I'm not going to say significant difference, but has made a difference in combat in certain situations that I've noticed.
Oh,
so
definitely.
So because of that, I've had more respect for, like, I guess, +1 armors that also do something else that aren't cooling vents. So,
yeah,
you know, this is the next one I want to see it playable.
Yeah, you know, I tried Rapid Ascent really hard for a while with Shockwave. Maybe there's definitely some Shockwave builds that I've personally been experimenting with after Wave 2. I haven't quite figured out what they look like yet. But as you said, given even just the infusion of ranged characters, it gives you a lot more options so that maybe it'll slot into something that you wouldn't have expected before.
Yeah, and I think mostly in Wave 1 there were more characters in Wave 1 both that had multiple modes on them. There aren't as many now.
Oh, like melee on one side, ranged on the other, you mean?
Yeah, like I don't think there's any specialists on one side, not specialists on the other side in the set at all.
You'd really be straining my brain to figure that out. I'd have to go look. There's no way that I'm even going to take a stab at that. I feel like there's one, but I could be completely wrong.
I think it's just Prow and Wheeljack still from Wave 1 that can do it. So
I'm sure somebody will let us know, whoever's out there watching / listening. Somebody will tell us. Or we'll realize it as soon as we're done recording. That's usually what happens.
Or I could just pull up the app.
You could. But you can't multi-filter, so, well, I get you'd have to go through each character one by one, and we can hear the transformation noise over and over again.
No. I mean, once you hit specialist, I know the rest of the modes. But,
okay.
So, one of the bumblebees is probably both of them, because I don't ever play those bad bumblebees. So.
Oh, from Wave 1. I was going to say, the new one is range melee.
Let's see. Is the common bumblebee a specialist on both sides?
The 9-drop one is a specialist, but he's on both sides.
Chromia is a specialist on both sides. Oh, is Sludge a specialist on both sides? Yeah, he's specialist on both sides.
Yeah.
All the swoops are specialists on both sides. All the flame wars are just Prowl and Wheeljack are the ones that are only specialists on one side. Everyone else is specialist on both sides.
All right, we did it, folks. We're closing up shop. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. No.
Told you we get there.
Yep. So I guess we can kind of wrap up the combat tribes on that note. Was there any last second things before we move on, Scott?
No, I think the point is it's an important factor for the battle cards now. More important factor, I think, than it was in Wave 1, and I think that two extremely powerful marksmanship for range and field communicator for specialists will drag along the other cards, and so just keep that in mind.
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely, like you said, something to be more conscious of as you're building things or preparing for things. You actually have to care whether they have ranged or specialists now, as opposed to previously where it's okay, if they're melee, I'll see body armors.
Right.
So moving from there, we have the last couple weeks, we've talked about builds that either we played or we had planned on playing, and were kind of, I don't want to say set in stone, but they had a little more substance to them because they were definitely a thing. So we talked about the aerial bots. We talked about updates to old decks, those sort of things. This time around, we're talking about Predacons, as they were the first combiner team that was previewed way back when. And I kind of want to play them. We have an event upcoming this weekend. We have a tournament coming up in Swarthmore on Saturday. And I'm pretty close to playing them. There are a couple other things in the mix. I have a few Dreadwing builds that I'm working on. I'm desperately trying to make Constructicons work, but I can't quite figure it out yet. So Predacons are up on the list, and I took it in a wildly different direction. But before we get into my terrible ideas, Scott, what made you want to bring up this particular combiner team?
Because it's one that I don't have experience trying out. At paper, they seem weaker than other options to me. But they seem to be the second most playable combiner team. And because I like a lot of their flip abilities.
Oh, the parts, you mean?
Yeah. So I think that what I liked about aerial bots a lot is that like the individual parts had different uses, and I would say that same thing with the Sentinels. And in this situation, I think that the Predacons also had that. It's just that, in my opinion, all 5 of them don't fall into that category, and that's where like I wanted to know from you that had experience playing with them, where you felt like they were on that scale of, is the whole better than the sum of the parts? Is it just,
Gotcha.
Are you trying to get to a mode, like, is it a controlling thing like the aerial bots, so that you're just trying to win at the end, or is it more like Sentinels, you need to combine if you don't want to, or is it somewhere in the middle? Does having a ton of weapons even matter? Like, just curious.
Well, let me tell you this. I have never had more than, or I take that back. I think actually on camera against Dan after the Adventurers Guild event, I might have had 4 weapons. But I don't think I've ever hit 5. I think the fact that you can hold 2 is probably good enough, because if you're at 12 or 13 attack because of Energon Axe, Scoundrel's Blaster, 2 axes, whatever, is like, that's good enough. You don't need to go nuts and try and have 20 attack. Like, that's not going to happen anyway. Barring, I don't even know what scenario you'd both live long enough and have all the cards to do that. So I guess to answer one of your later questions, I was trying to build for the combiner mostly for funsies, and then it turned out to be halfway decent. I honestly expected this to be the worst combiner, both team and combined form. But then it turned out that Menasor has just been performing awful. So he's taken sole possession of last place for me personally. Now, I started out initially with a blue build, which I know a lot of people, and you included, and it's not that I don't like the orange build. We'll get into that in a minute, but specifically, I started out with blue because I felt that they are sturdier than they appear. So Headstrong, the brave guy, has 3 defense. If you assume you're flipping 2 blues, you're blocking 5 on turn 1, which means that he's probably only taking 2 damage from an incoming shrapnel attack, or even if it's kickback, you're taking 3 and living, assuming kickback is on 8. Because I think that obviously it could fluctuate, but I think 8 is probably a reasonable assumption for how much damage output he has.
Sure.
In which case, now they need to invest additional cards to address him. And if they don't, then he can either just sit around for the wheel turn, or if they decided to flip and send in Scrapnel, which I don't believe is correct, but let's assume they did, you could theoretically heal up Headstrong off of Rampage just by sending in random dorks into flipped Scrapnel, because they'll get there eventually, and then heal your whole team for 1. Outside scenario, but it is something that could happen. The big concern there is that because Headstrong only has 5 health, he's super vulnerable to One Shall Stand. So even that 2 damage on him initially means that One Shall Stand just eliminates him. And that's where I eventually started to drift into aerial bots, because their brave guy has significantly more health.
And not significantly less defense.
Yeah, exactly. So you're not having a humongous trade-off there. Now, that being said, the remainder of the team, and the reason why I'm referencing the game where I played Dan, is he was playing 3-wide Optimus, and Scoundrel, it felt good because it lined up with Scoundrel's Blaster into Autobots, just like if you played, Noble's Blaster into Decepticons. It would make it inflate the potential, I guess, is the best way to put it. And then additionally, since I was going blue, I was utilizing, like I said earlier, Energon Slingshots, Energon Axes, because you could actually, get value out of them pre and post combine. And then just hoping that you can chip everybody down. Hypothetically, you get bigger they are, you get Pierce effect here, Pierce effect there, combine, and then hopefully one-shot everything. It struggled against a number of different things, and then also performed admirably in other matchups. Like it's still in flux. There might be something there, but the biggest issue is that Energon Axe is clunky, like we discussed about aerial bots last time.
For 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. It's an important card, but yeah, it is clunky, but it's your best blue weapon. You're going to play it. Scoundrel Blaster is fine, but it's still a primary laser. And then what else are you playing?
Out of you're at a blue, that's the problem. There's your Energon Slingshot, there's your Power Sword. These things you're just not going to play.
Yeah, I mean, Energon Slingshot, like we said earlier, is fine for this because it gives you a way to deal with flipped Scrapnel, or at least, just get through, because since you're blue, you're not attacking for much. I
think it's decent here because of Razor Claw, because you could just occasionally randomly not kill somebody with 1 damage and then kill them. Like, it could happen. So
yeah, it's definitely something that comes up. Unfortunately, and part of what drew me to this initially, like early on, before we knew Bashing Shield was going to be good, and I think I've said this on other shows, or you have, or whoever. Like, I don't think any of us said Bashing Shield is not going to see play, but it still was shocking how oppressive it feels. Like you said, body armor is borderline unplayable. And that's what initially drew me to this, because body armor, you could play it pre-combine, you can play it post-combine, but it doesn't matter because they're just going to bash and shield it and you're going to die.
Right. So the fact that this whole team, except for Dive Bomb, is melee, brings us back to the original to the other conversation, which with
exactly.
melee being so bad, it's not as good. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. It's unfortunate, but it is the way it is. And since there's no Decepticon, like there's no matrix for Decepticons, so being a leader on Razor Claw is irrelevant. You do get access to field communicators on Dive Bomb, but if you're like Rapid Ascent can't be run here, to bring up another card that you were talking about, because there are no ranged. So you're just flipping Dive Bomb blind. I mean, you get Espionage, but it's tough to ensure that you're ever hitting anything, let alone something relevant. So just kind of flip and pray. The deck as blue is fun. I don't think it's actually, I don't know. There are games where it feels close and it's like, wow, I took no damage. I combined at like with barely anything on me. Oh, look, I have double Energon axes. Okay, I win. Or at times where you can Enigma multiple times to draw into other things and then go find an axe to play on your guy. And it feels great. There are plenty of games where it's just, oh, well, I'm doing 0 damage and then I just die.
Right.
Because against orange things, you could chip a guy down, maybe pre-combined. So like say you're against bugs. You could, through combination of weapon, Energon axes, whatever, Energon slingshots, whatever, chip one of the bugs down. And then maybe combine with enough health and then try and race. It's just, usually you come out on the short end of that trade, from what I've found. And it could be I'm attacking in the wrong order. It could be because, it's still experimenting with a bunch of different things. It basically amounted to, if they're able to avoid having to sink 2 attacks into Headstrong, aka they have one shall stand, you lose, is what it boils down to.
Yeah, I mean, they can have even the blue decks have other things now, like besides just one shall stand. I mean, he won't get marksmanship, but I think he can still get some arm hovercraft damage here or there. He can get pierced down. Like, he doesn't seem very hard to deal with. He just seems like a much worse shrapnel against even blue decks.
Right. Yeah, most of my testing has been this into bugs or this into sentinels. And I'm not, I guess my game plan, because having not tested it all that extensively against blue, was just going to do what I can and then hope that I can ride a 13 attack guy, assuming that everybody doesn't just die. Because on the flip side, if say you're against 3-wide Optimus, none of your guys are dying probably until Optimus attacks. So you should get to combine, and you should combine with a reasonable health total. It's just a matter of whether they hit enough, either bigger they are as post-combine or Energon axes pre-combine, because, you'll swing in with Rampage, do 2 damage, and then they slam Energon axe, and you go, well, that was a mistake. At least that's kind of what it amounts to, or at least how I've been mapping it out in my head. If there was another solid blue weapon, maybe. So if there was a Optimus Ion Blaster that Predacon could play, maybe. Something that like boosted his defense or, some way made that happen, plus be worthwhile as an actual attack card, then maybe that would be... What was that?
Or if there was like a weapon that gave the steamroll ability, or steamroll wasn't blank and had absolutely no use before you were combined, or was like...
Yeah. There are a lot of if wishes were fishes scenarios for this deck, but it doesn't, unfortunately. We just don't have those cards, so I don't think anything from the Devastator set. What was that?
Did I lose you? I lost you there for a second.
Oh, all right. I was going to say there's not much from the Devastator set that I think is really going to buoy that particular strategy. I mean, yeah, work overtime is nice, but if you're already leaning into weapons, you're probably playing Treasure Hunt. I don't know. Like I said, it boils down to it's fun, but I don't think the blue version is going to work. Now, the orange side, however, seems to have some decent potential, since despite having 2-3 attack, you can still push out some decent things, and Razor Claw lets you do some really mean things. Like, I don't know, earlier today, I was just running some test games, and it's like, oh, well, I'll just go kill your unflipped barrage because I can.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, I'm running, so it was Grenade Launcher, Reckless Charge, puts it at 11, and then it's just like, okay, get there.
Right.
Now, the issue I have with that, and I was curious your thoughts on this, so the way I'm anticipating, say, bugs would play into it is turn 1, flip kickback, kill Headstrong. Because otherwise, it's not, I don't think it's unreasonable that someone's just going to flip Razor Claw as soon as you can play 2 cards, play any 2 combat buffs, and kill kickback.
I would agree there.
So as a result, I'm assuming that you need to get in with kickback early on. Plus, he's the only one that on turn 1 has like a decent shot of one-shotting Headstrong.
Okay.
From there,
Is that better than, like, again, because you're melee, you're not going to have as many options to get around Scrapnel. So, like, is it better for them just to, if they're on the, you're talking about them being on the play, like, should they just eat the multiple attacks? Like, I don't know if you were playing ways to damage him at all.
I'm not sure whether it is or not. So I am, I have different burn options, like one shell stand going in and out, because if you're playing orange, these guys are dying in one shot to virtually everything.
Agreed. It's just like the constructive conversations we've had in the past.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, it's who cares? And even
right.
So even if you one shell stand or reckless charge something like Razor Claw, they are still outside of opposing one shell stand range, which is important because then it's not just good.
And they're outside of blue random donk combiners killing them range too. So
exactly. So you're not just opening yourself up in those scenarios to go, well, I guess I just die now to nonsense.
Right.
But to your question, I don't know on the bug side, should you just flip Scrapnel and get in? I mean, I said, I'm running burn, so that changes the equation. But at the same time, I think the biggest issue for bugs in this scenario is that if you don't, like, you have no way to interact with Razor Claw, so it's just a matter of, do they have a way to get 8 damage between combat flips and cards?
Eventually, so it's just a matter of time before kickback dies without any use. So I see what you're saying. Like, you're going to lose an attacker regardless. So
right, but they're much less likely to one shot even Chop Shop. So like I guess they could turn around if they get in with kickback. You could load up Razor Claw and go punch their unflipped Scrapnel instead. Because the big thing is just, and you said this when we talked about cards, you steal one of their attacks and now suddenly you have more guys than they do.
I mean, you can attack, like, a fully sorted up Razor Claw should be able to kill anybody, right? I mean, like, you can kill Scrapnel, you can kill Kickback, you can kill...
Chop Shop and Barrage obviously are the more challenging ones where you have to have Grenade Launcher, Reckless Charge to be able to get there.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, like, it, if you supercharge or power punch and it's like, oh, well, I flip all the double pips. Okay, great. Yeah, you got there, but I'm not counting those hands.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, you can also mining pick double oranges and things like that. That's going to help you as well. It creates a grenade launcher. So you can almost say there's 2 grenade launchers. You're definitely going to be playing Treasure Hunt as it is. So I mean, you can definitely make your own grenade launcher in multiple ways.
Oh, absolutely.
And you can have a supercharged act like a reckless charge. So you're getting redundancy in what you're doing.
Yeah, and that's why I think, and again, not being the expert bug player, is that it would be appropriate for Kickback to get in because, like, it's either that or I'm getting no value, and all of the other ones, if they punch Headstrong, are gonna and even potentially Kickback, because everybody who's played bugs has had that time where Kickback did like 4 damage because it flipped every blank in the deck or something. if you don't get in, he's going to eat either multiple attacks or an attack and cards that you'd rather use elsewhere. So I feel like that's correct, but I'm not sure.
Do any of them attack better in alt mode?
Any of the bugs or any of the Predacons?
No, Predacons.
No, they're all basically 2 in, Headstrong is 1, but the rest are 2 in alt mode and then 3 in bot mode.
I'm trying to think if there's any drivers that flip Torox and don't just immediately attack with them because you use the plan on somebody else, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I wasn't sure if that situation ever comes up at all.
It had come up before where there are times that I went, oops, I really could have set up a better mining pick turn later. But the alternative, I guess, and depending on what you're playing against, is flip Rampage, get in, because let's face it, the heal is never going to matter.
He's the Pierce one?
Yeah. So the Pierce could matter, depending on what you're playing against, but it's Pierce 2 versus having 3 attack, and if you're flipping 2 oranges, it's not, you may end up only doing 2 anyway. So it's 6
if you're orange, I would assume Pierce 2 is not as good, but
right.
I mean, it would help if it's like Scoundrel's Blaster or something might help there against the blue deck, but
yeah,
generally, I'm talking turn 1. So I'm just wondering if the Toraka play outside of, you want to flip him for value, not his own value, somebody else's value, I guess you could say.
I mean, most of my openings have been, okay, they punch Headstrong, flip Torox, get in on whoever they sent in. But I can definitely see what you're saying. I've been trying to experiment with some other openings, like swinging in with Dive Bomb first. Because
that seems horrible.
Well, the reason being is that he's 7-2 in alt mode. So into, say, a flip Scrapnel or something like that. And part of it's me being influenced by the fact that I don't think I've ever hit a card off of his flip, ever. Or I'm sure I have, but it feels like never.
Huh.
It's just that...
I mean, then if that's your plan, you can't play Field Communicator.
Well, yes. It's just something that I've been trying to... Like I said, the usual plan is flip Torox, get in. It's just I've been trying to look at the other ones to see if there is exactly what you were saying. Do I want to save Torox for a mining pick turn kind of thing? Or is there some other better way to do this?
Yeah, that's fair.
I haven't really found a better one because obviously you don't want to just randomly jam Razor Claw in there. Headstrong, unless he's flipped, is really unexciting to attack with. I mean, I guess into that unflipped Scrapnel, there you go. Because you're probably gonna flip 2 oranges. You got your 3 damage. Who cares?
You mean your flip Scrapnel?
Or flip Scrapnel, rather? Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know. It still doesn't feel great because again, since they had to punch him first, he's probably just gonna die. And if he dies without actually soaking anything, aka they one shall stand him. Now Razor Claw is exposed and probably dead in 1 hit.
Well, I think if they attacked, I mean, if they were first and they attacked Headstrong first, obviously, then I think you just wind up if it's bugs, I think you just re-swing right back into the Scrapnel as it is, and you try to do 3, and they did. If you ate 2 attacks and they just as many, I think you're even in that situation.
Well, so that's where like I said, the one shall stand issue comes up. So if they swing in with Scrapnel, they put 2 effectively on Headstrong. You punch him back, you put 3 on there. They one shall stand it. They're gonna
put 4, right?
Oh God.
He's just right next to me, that's all.
Oh no. Yeah, I can barely hear you, that's why.
Hang on. I mean, they're going to put 4 on him. That's the problem. Because they're going to attack for 7, and you're only going to 7.
Right. So point being is they have ways out of combat to eliminate him now. And if you...
Attack with him right away. Back again.
But if you do that, then they now have a clear path to the remainder of the team. So and maybe this is not the right way to go about it, but the way I've been focused on it is you need Razor Claw in order to steal kill one of their untapped guys. if you do that, it's, it's smooth sailing. Hypothetically, anyway.
So then you're in a situation where you think Kickback would be able to take out Razor Claw in one attack to do the 9?
I think any of them, well, maybe not any of them, Chop Shop wouldn't be able to. But because at that point, if they went first, now they're playing 2 cards, so they played a burn spell plus any weapon.
Yes. I don't know. They have to have a pretty good, sort of. Maybe not. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, they have to have certain things. At this stage, I don't know whether that's, like, I haven't sat down and lined everything up to say this scenario is more likely than this one, so I'm going to go this line.
I think it's weird to put up a different sacrificial lamb than when they're eventually just going to have the burn anyway. Like, it's weird that you don't get any value at the Brave guy other than he basically...
Well, it's like I said, it's going to depend on whether... It'll depend on whether it's more likely for them to be able to do that play of zap / one shall stand, clear out Headstrong, and then also play Grenade Launcher, Mining Pick, whatever. I can't think of something else off the top of my head.
I mean, I think it would only have to be one shell stand. I think you have to play Espionage as is anyway, so you could get rid of an orange card, and honestly, if Zap's the best one, you could just get rid of it in that situation. So I don't think it's that bad of a thing. Like, the only thing you'd be bad against would be one shell stand.
Right.
So,
well, it's also, you only have, so we're talking literally just turn 1.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also how much redundancy can you get in trying to keep your guy alive versus their redundant effects of out of combat removal.
Yeah, my whole point is, like, the matchups against other aggressive decks would seem to come down to who has the worst turns out of the deal, and
right.
You don't want to give them free access to all your guys. You have a guy that'll have access to all their guys, and I think if you keep that advantage, you're ahead. So I would just play cards to make sure that you were able to get that. And to me, the easiest one to play is just to play Espionage, because that way you could clear out unless they had a one shell stand, or at least make an educated decision about what the right play would be then.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm playing Espionage also.
Yeah.
There's, to be honest, the list that I had put together initially there's a lot of things that are on the sideline that I'd like to include. For example, this feels like it would be a very, very good Swindled deck.
Yeah. I guess so, yeah.
I mean, yes and no, because obviously it's an orange card. You want to get the extra weapons out. You're going to be an aggressive build. You can treasure hunt for a handful of stuff, then Swindled the next turn to plop it all into play. It feels like it would be really good, especially leading into Predacons, but maybe it's not necessary. I also want to try and find room for Static Laser, just because it's another guaranteed 3, but it's getting heavy.
Isn't Erratic Lightning just better?
Well, that too. I said those in the wrong order, but yes.
Okay.
Erratic Lightning is on my short list right now. I'm playing around with a couple different options.
How many guys do they have? They have 0 defense. They have Turox in bot mode that has 0 defense, probably in both modes. I don't even know.
Yes, and Dive Bomb has 0 in bot mode.
So I think Erratic Lightning is better.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I said those in the wrong order, but yes, Erratic Lightning is on the list as well. The problem is at this stage trying to squeeze them in, and I just need more games to determine, okay, is Field Communicator actually worth it, or I don't care? I think it's worth it. What was that?
It's worth it.
In this, I think it is, because it's either, okay, play another weapon, because that's the other thing, is that, okay, I'll treasure hunt for 4 weapons. It's going to take me 4 turns to play them all.
Right.
So there's my Swindled, plus it's also in a slot that, I can get the other weapon. Bottom line is there's a bunch of other things I'm toying around with for it.
But overall, I mean, like I think it's a solid deck. I think it has advantages over other, I guess you could say like mid range. Well, I mean, so if your Insecticons are your most aggressive deck, I think it has advantages over there because it has 5 characters and you can attack with one major character wherever you want.
Yeah.
It has a slight discard element and it has the ability to play specialist. So I think all those factors are heavily in the Predacons' favor. Just having more characters means you're just going to do more damage, even though their guys are singularly powerful. Also, you can just make Barrage irrelevant because you can just make sure you have no guys with damage on them, or he overkills whoever he attacks anyway.
Right. Well, that's one thing that has come up that is, so even Barrage not active is threatening enough because 7 damage is like, he barely needs help to get there sort of thing. I mean, if you ever send a damage guy out there, they're 100% dead, obviously, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. Like we said, Dive Bomb has 0 defense. He goes out there, he's just toast. There's
nothing you can do against an orange deck that's going to be playing with. They're going to have like 5 power guys. There's nothing you can do about that anyway.
Oh yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. It's just, I guess where I'm going with it is deactivating Barrage isn't as much of an advantage for this particular deck because, well, your guys are made of paper anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, they're spending more stars to get essentially not much more attack than you're getting, is my point, and you have more guys, so it's just more to your advantage as it is.
Right. Yeah,
I would assume you're probably favored in a Sentinel matchup for exactly the same reason that Insecticons is favored in the Sentinel matchup. So I think you would lean heavier on the aggressive build there. I just think you would probably be. I don't know how you would be. I mean, you would have the same problems that Insecticons has with heavy blue decks, where you would be the underdog. But there may be ways to get around that because you get to become a giant, massive guy because the blue decks aren't actually able to get as much value out of you. Like, I don't know how the aerial bot matchup would play out, but it would seem to be closer than the bug matchup was with aerial bots, for example.
I would think, and that's something that, I mean, we'll have to test and see, but it's, yes, you do have an out because eventually you can just go, well, I'm going to combine and try and smash. The problem is that I don't know if you're going to do any damage pre-combination. I mean, obviously, you throw a random grenade launcher out there or something, but...
Well, you have... If it's you can still play Scoundrel if you want it.
Yeah, that's also on my list. I didn't mention that earlier. It's not currently in the deck, but it's something I'm trying to find room for. It's just... I mean, I have a lot of things that are white pips right now, and that's a problem, because now we're diluting, as we said earlier, having combat pips that are not the primary focus of the deck.
I mean, I think you can make singularly powerful attacks that would actually get damage on them, and it would be a true race of one combiner versus another. And that now for the other blue-based decks, I don't know how they would play out. But it would seem to be like your typical Optimist or your typical Nemesis type decks where they have a singular big attacker flanked by other guys. It's probably a little bit worse than it would be like against an aerial bot type list. But I don't think I think they're still going to be in an overkill type situation. So I don't think it's that bad.
Well, they are, but that only matters if you're getting stuff in return. So, I mean, not that Optimus Nemesis is a thing right this second, but
I just mean that I don't mean those two characters together. I just mean
I
feature one or the other.
Right, but what I'm saying is, so even 3-wide Optimus, I don't know if you're actually doing any damage. Like, okay, you'll get your one out of the whole turn cycle. You'll get one guy that gets through for like 3 or 4 damage, and then your Pierce guy.
I think you'll do.
I mean, it's possible. It can feel really oppressive on the other side, I think. Not having played it wave 2, but from wave 1, that it's just, sometimes you just never do anything of value, and they're just brutalizing one character a turn methodically.
not a turn, a cycle.
Or it's cycle, yes.
That's the point. Like the other guys aren't going to do much, so like, you know, and you're immune. Bigger they are, so I don't know. I think it has more play.
Well, yeah, I'm not writing it off entirely. I don't mean to sound like it's completely unwinnable. I'm just not super optimistic going into it because I don't have that. So, like I said, against bugs or other aggressive stuff, it's okay. Set up Razor Claw, off prowl / kickback / whoever's available, steal an attack. Now I'm way up on characters. Either I'll just lean on you with the aggression or I'll combine eventually and get there. Against the blue decks, it feels like just poke them where you can and eventually combine and hope that's enough, which doesn't sound as impressive.
I mean, I don't know. I think you're certainly favored in the 3-character aggressive decks like Dinobots and Sentinels. I think you can play your way through the bug matchup, and I just don't know how the blue ones would go. So I think it's a good deck, personally, like to try out.
Yeah, it's something
I haven't tried yet.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to testing it out further because as I said, I started out with the blue version because it was just fun. It was really cool to combine, and then, I play another Enigma. Oh, look, I drew an Energon Axe, slam it down. You may not have Energon Axes in the orange version, but grenade launchers are pretty fun too.
Yes. I think I again, like, I just look at the characters and I think some of their full abilities just aren't very interesting. And I think that's probably what led me against them. Like, I feel like Headstrong and the Pierce one just aren't very interesting. I think Torok's ability is fine. I think Razor Claw's ability is excellent, and I think Dive Bomb's ability is excellent. But the other two are just like very underwhelming. So that's the thing of what took me away from them, but it's just something I haven't tried yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely, I mean, Headstrong is literally blank on the bot side, so I can understand why that's not too exciting. Unless somebody really likes vanilla ice cream. That's, I mean, like I said,
his health is just not good enough to even be relevant on the bolt side. So
yeah, if he had one more health, I'd feel a lot better about him. But it is what it is. The other ones I've begun to appreciate the Rampage ability, but that's really only, again, in the blue version where they would survive to have damage on them, and maybe it would matter because, again, it's dodging direct damage. In the orange version, you just have to operate under the assumption everyone's dying in one hit, and that's full stop.
It heals your whole team or just one guy?
Heals your whole team. But
okay.
It only, obviously, again, they're just probably going to die, or it'll be one guy and everyone else is dead sort of thing most of the time.
Still.
Yeah.
That's fair. I mean, and like we said, he's not going to want to attack on that mode anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Right. We did have some stuff. I think that's Stefan in the chat. Estatakuma. I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that's him. He said he thinks Sentinels against Predacons and bugs are fine, just had to add direct damage. Oh, it is definitely Stefan. Okay. So he's controlling their hand with Mirage and Espionage. Predacons he thinks will pretty much never combine, which may be true. I actually went up to 3 Enigmas just to try it out, because if you're running 2, yes, the Espionages, the Mirages, the whatevers really do strip them constantly. With a third one, it's okay, you actually have a chance of hitting it on the last defense or just hitting multiple so that you can have some redundancy.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Oh, God.
Any wide orange deck is going to have an advantage. A smaller orange deck, in my opinion. Just esoterically, but I have to see it play out to tell. But.
Well, I'm curious to see, so for example, double Grimlock against this. Is Grimlock and Steamroll enough? Because you're clearly one-shotting one guy. Can you get there with enough damage to one-shot 2 guys and then do it again?
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that was more of a rhetorical because I have no idea. I didn't expect you to. Oh yeah, I know the numbers and here it is. But you are the numbers guy. Why don't you know this? You got to know all the numbers at all times, Scott.
I just think the meat decks cause themselves to be in these overkill situations more often than they are the efficient attack situations, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just simply a control beats aggro, aggro control beats control type situation. Like it's the way that this specifically, in my mind, just plays out. Ideally, obviously, bad hands coming into play. It just seems to be in the favor of these decks, and all decks to me are always going to be shades of some version of that outside of like combo decks like Starscream,
of course,
which don't really operate outside of that. So like they're just different shades of wherever that is, and I feel like all character teams that you build should be their best selves one way or the other. And I feel like this deck just its best self is being orange and being heavily that. I don't agree with the versions that are playing like Scrounge and like Claw and bad cards.
That's leaning a little too much into the combiner. I really think in general for the combiners, and obviously it's not true in all cases, but it really feels like that emergency lever for them. Like it's if it was the cartoon, it's the one finishing move at the end of the show kind of thing. Where like when we talked about Sentinels last week, it's maybe they only run one Enigma and it's just there for that one time they need it. Or this deck, I'm running extra Enigmas because I think it may be necessary against certain things, and you need to make sure you see it then. But maybe you just ignore them otherwise, and you're playing, okay, I have 5 guys, and they all hit pretty decently. Try and stop me.
I mean, what I like about it is it changes one of the rules, which is kind of like weapons are only useful on the turn that you actually play them, and then because the guy's not going to survive anyway. I think like in this situation, you can get double use out of a weapon, which is obviously rare. Same thing hypothetically could happen with Dreadwing as well, where you're getting double use out of a weapon the round that you play it. So I like that aspect of it as well. I just don't think you need an extra heavy weapon slot version. I just think there is
something. There is a comment say there's such a thing as too much of a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that may be where a lot of builds are leaning. I definitely think there's something here, and it definitely took me by surprise. I'll admit that because I really went in expecting Predacons to be like the meme combiner. It's like, oh yeah, there'll be somebody who manages to get all 5 weapons, and they're going to get in for $1 million, and then probably lose because their opponent has 1,000 attacks instead. But it actually seems to have some legs under it.
Yeah, I really think, when we were reviewing all the set before it came out, I just really feel like the 2 concepts we were wrong about were how prevalent overkill damage really is in certain situations, and then also just how much play you get out of having 5 characters. We can talk about it next week as it sets out, but I mean, how having 6 characters affects that at all, but we can go from there.
Right. Yeah, like I said at the top, we're pretty close to the top. This, in one way, shape, or form, is definitely on my short list to play this weekend, but Constructicons, I mean, I don't have any real personal connection to Predacons. I do own a G1 Tantrum, and you can see him down on the scrolling feed, but Devastator I have much more personal connection with, I guess. So I really want to play it. I just haven't figured out how to get it to happen yet.
He was the one, the Decepticon combiner I did own, I think. Or did I? No, I didn't have the Combaticon, so I did have Predacons, and I put them together. I remember it must have been like over the holidays, I got all 5 of them, put them together, and the plastic they used on the Predacons was so heavy that for 2 years I could not uncombine him. As hard as I tried to pull them apart without breaking.
That sounds like it. Yeah, that sounds like an '80s toy.
I could not uncombine him. Like, so that was it. Everyone just fought against Predacons. So.
Well, for a while that kind of was the thing. He's one of the big bads, so it makes sense. Yeah, there have been some other. I mean, we obviously got the recent Predaking. We'll call it True Predaking reissue with the toys. They had tried for a while in Prime to make him a singular entity instead of a combiner. It was a cool concept, but I kind of wish they used a different name. It was fitting in the context of the show, but it is what it is.
He was really good in Power of the Prime.
Did he actually do anything? Like he wasn't didn't pull a Metasaur?
No, he didn't pull a Metasaur. he fought Volcanicus, and then he shows up to quote, I saved the day at one point, like distract I think he distracted what's his name? The big bad, the Fallen, whatever his real name. Megatronus,
yeah,
and then got destroyed. But at least he did something.
Yes, he has his claim to fame. He had his 15 minutes of fame. So,
and he was always combined. I don't think they ever were in Predacon mode at all. I think he was always Predacon the entire time. Yeah,
that's interesting. I mean, I do like the whole concept, and there have been some interesting both fan theories and within some of the media as to what exactly happens when they're in combined modes, and how it affects them psychologically and that sort of thing. But anyway, I could go, ask my wife. I could go for a very long time digressing about the philosophy of Transformers and what happens for a lot of these things. But any other thoughts on Predacons, orange, blue, or otherwise before we kind of wrap up for tonight?
No, I mean, like I said, this is one of the decks that I have not tried, hadn't really considered until having longer conversations, which we pretty much just had. But just really diving into. This is just an example of a deck that I think I kind of wrote off in the beginning without really understanding what the effect of things you could have done in the past poorly, like have 5-character teams and things like that, and just really understanding what the effect of them are. And because I typically slant my decks towards a blue focus, I hadn't thought about it from the aspect of having that many attackers who are always doing medium amounts of damage and what that means. So that's why we decided to talk about it, because it's one of the teams that we're having an event coming up this weekend that we hadn't played yet, so it was an option to try that out.
Absolutely, yeah. The not to drag it out any longer, but something you had just said, the medium amounts of frequent amounts of medium damage is part of why I'm concerned about the blue matchups, because I distinctly recall that being a problem for early iterations of cars into early iterations of Prime builds, where it was
but that's because there was armor. You don't have armor anymore, so
right. But it still is. It's still falling in the same trap of, okay, am I going to be pushing enough damage? You should be, but again, we'll have to see how it shapes up.
The difference is, and this is that I noticed when playing a combiner, is being a combiner matters.
Being a combiner what?
Matters in that situation, where it didn't matter when you had the same 3 cars attacking for the same amount of damage every single turn. Now you suddenly get to a state where you're attacking for a lot more damage.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, there's that point where, okay, you turn the corner now that you hit the Enigma, and if they don't espionage it or whatever, they might be in a world of hurt, or maybe it won't matter. I don't know. We got to actually play it out and see how it goes.
Yep.
So I guess that kind of does it for this week, ladies and gentlemen. We didn't mention it at the beginning, but as always, if you have any questions, there are lots of questions from our 4-legged co-host, but
I don't know what they're asking.
Yeah, your guess is probably better than mine, but probably for something to eat. I know that's always what my dog is looking for. It doesn't matter.
No, they're just yelling at somebody walking.
Okay. But if you have any questions, definitely hit us up either there's a lot of contacts on VectorSigma.info itself. Hit us up in the comments, on Twitter, on Facebook. You can find us on all the various social media pages. You'll see all the contact information in the show notes. So we do definitely want to do a mailbag section. So hit us up with any questions, whether it's about stuff we talked about or things you want to hear us talk about, or if you just want to ask general questions, let us know. We'll take what we can get.
Yep.
So, like I said, I guess that'll do it for this. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and tune in next time for more Random Thoughts.